My name is Lauren Cooper, 27 years old, a strategic investment analyst who had just spent the last 3 weeks salvaging a messy client portfolio, was standing near the bar, feeling predictably out of place. The one thing I remember clearly wasn't the Christmas music or the expensive wine, but the metallic screech of forks halting mid-air. It was the annual Vance and Coder's holiday party, the kind of Manhattan event where every glass cost more than my monthly student loan payment. My older sister Vivian Cooper strolled across the polished marble floor, radiating that predatory confidence she always had, gripping the arm of her boyfriend Julian Vance, the CEO. Julian, impossibly tall and sharp-eyed, was the reason I had the job, a connection Vivian constantly leveraged. She stopped directly in front of me, forcing me into the spotlight, and the entire room seemed to lean in. My brother stood nearby with our parents, all of them wearing matching smug expressions. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes as she introduced me. "Julian, darling, meet my little sister. This is Lauren Cooper, the failure of the family, the one who just got fired last week." My mother Martha let out a high, sharp laugh, and Father Howard raised his glass in a silent toast to the supposed disgrace. I felt the familiar burn of injustice, but I held my composure. Julian Vance, the CEO, remained silent. He didn't look at me. He looked only at my family, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Then, in a voice that cut through the background music like shattered glass, he said, "Interesting, because Vivian, you have been fired effective immediately, and we're done." Father Howard choked on his vintage scotch. Mother Martha's hand flew to her pearls. Vivian's face drained of color, utterly panicked. The sudden silence was deafening, but Julian's next move made it clear this wasn't the full story. "Before I get into my story, tell me what time it is, where you are, and which city you're watching from, so I'll know just how far my story has reached. If you want to know how I brought complete downfall to the most toxic people in my life, hit that like button right now. And don't miss the next chapter of my journey. Subscribe and turn on notifications." That chaos only lasted a few minutes, but to understand why I stood there enduring it, we have to go back 25 years. Our family, the Coopers, were built on prestige and appearance. Father Howard, a renowned cardiovascular surgeon, and Mother Martha, a controlling socialite, valued public honor over everything else, which meant favoring Vivian and Darren. From the beginning, Vivian was the golden child, her every mediocrity hailed as genius. She was granted the best schools, the most expensive cars, and endless excuses. I, Lauren, was the designated scapegoat, the quiet one whose achievements were minimized and whose mistakes were magnified to protect the facade. Vivian, driven by pure, ingrained jealousy, constantly used her favored status to sabotage me, turning minor disagreements into dramatic episodes that always ended with me somehow being the villain in our parents' eyes. She once ruined my acceptance letter to a competitive college, blaming it on a supposed clerical error she'd discovered, successfully steering me toward a less prestigious option that she claimed was better for the family image. Darren Cooper, my older brother, was the third pillar of their toxicity. He wasn't overtly cruel like Vivian, but his malice was insidious. Darren always sided with the parents, and Vivian using sophisticated dismissive language to reinforce their narratives. When I got my degree in finance, Darren, a mediocre sales manager, scoffed, "Another analyst in Manhattan? How original. Don't strain yourself trying to reach Vivian's level." He'd consistently jump in to make any argument I had with Vivian 10 times worse, framing my legitimate grievances as childish pettiness or insubordination to the family hierarchy. Their combined psychological assault taught me early on that my worth was irrelevant to them. Only their public perception mattered, and I was a liability to be managed. Howard and Martha perpetuated this, constantly praising Vivian's executive presence and Darren's business acumen, even when Vivian's ventures failed spectacularly, leaving me to often clean up the administrative fallout or silently cover minor debts to prevent a public scandal. I internalized that lesson, learning to operate quietly, efficiently, and most importantly, invisibly within their orbit. This domestic Cold War followed me into my adult life. I excelled at my job in fintech, a sector that demanded precision and zero tolerance for error skills, honed by years of walking on eggshells at home. My one sanctuary was my relationship with Elias Vance. Elias wasn't loud or flashy. He was a brilliant, grounded architect who loved me for my quiet strength and capability. Crucially, Elias was Julian Vance's older brother, a fact we kept hidden. Julian and Elias had a strained relationship, formal and mostly transactional, but the connection provided Elias with enough understanding of Julian's inner workings and the culture of Vance and Coas to know what I was up against. We knew that revealing our relationship would instantly create a massive, chaotic spectacle for my family, potentially jeopardizing both my career and Elias's reputation, especially given Vivian's position as Julian's supposedly serious girlfriend. We continued our quiet support network in secret meeting in neutral parts of the city, away from the judgmental glare of the Cooper clan and the transactional world of the Vance brothers, allowing me a single, indispensable space where I was genuinely valued and seen, a stark contrast to the continuous erosion of my self-worth at home. That hidden connection, that lifeline, became the one thing Vivian couldn't touch. The psychological warfare at the Cooper house was child's play. When I joined Vance and Coach, the fight became genuinely expensive. I had leveraged my own academic accomplishments, not family influence, to secure my position, but Vivian, already entrenched as the director of business development, immediately recognized me as a threat to her social climbing. The fintech environment was ruthless, and Vivian used her influence with Julian, who at that time genuinely seemed invested in their relationship, to sideline me. She had a knack for taking my meticulously prepared data and strategy reports, making minor cosmetic changes, and presenting them as her own brilliant work to the executive board. My boss, a man focused solely on Vivian's proximity to the CEO, never pushed back. The real escalation began with the Ascension Fund, a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar venture capital project I had spent 6 months researching. I saw the market gap, modeled the risk factors, and was ready to lead the team. Vivian, however, saw the prestige. 3 weeks before the presentation, she orchestrated a sudden reprioritization. She used her title to transfer me to a mundane, time-consuming compliance audit, claiming it was an urgent, high-visibility task that only I could handle. In reality, she cleared the deck, allowing her to take over the Ascension Fund pitch with my presentation slides and data. The irony was palpable. She wasn't smart enough to create the content, only manipulative enough to steal the credit. And the entire office knew it, but stayed silent out of fear of Julian's girlfriend. This internal sabotage wasn't Vivian's solo act. Darren, who had managed to secure a comfortable but non-essential role in the corporate relations department of a company that frequently did business with Vance & Co., became her outside accomplice. Whenever I generated a highly positive internal review or a stellar performance metric, Darren would subtly interfere through his network, requesting additional verification that inevitably bogged down my reviews in bureaucratic red tape. This effectively slowed the official recording of my achievements, making it look as though my progress was patchy or difficult to verify, a perfect counter-narrative for Vivian to use when dismissing my contributions in meetings. It was a perfectly executed strategy of professional suffocation designed to ensure I would never shine brightly enough to overshadow her manufactured success. Through all this, I noticed the subtle shifts in Julian Vance's behavior towards Vivian. While he remained publicly affectionate, privately he was increasingly cold and detached during company interactions. I often saw him scrutinizing her during presentations, his sharp eyes focused not with admiration, but with an almost forensic intensity. He would correct her financial projections with precision that suggested he hadn't fully trusted her data in the first place, or cut short her rambling explanations. It was a professional coolness that hinted at a deeper underlying issue, a crack in the foundation of their high-profile relationship. I didn't care about their relationship dynamics, but I filed the observation away. If Julian's trust in Vivian was eroding, it presented a window, however small, for me to eventually expose her professional misconduct without immediately involving the family drama. My focus wasn't on wrecking their relationship, but on reclaiming my work and my professional identity. I knew a hit was coming, but I didn't think they'd use a massive fund fraud to erase me from the company. It happened about a month before the Christmas party. I was preparing a pitch for a new European market entry, my own idea developed entirely outside of work hours to keep it safe from Vivian, when the initial bomb dropped. An internal audit notification landed in my inbox, highly unusual, and flagged as immediate concern. It detailed a significant seven-figure loss in an investor fund I had managed months prior. The report was professionally crafted using my access credentials and historical data to build a narrative of incompetence and negligence, concluding with the chilling words, "Recommendation immediate termination." The entire document was a fabrication, a malicious piece of art, but it looked utterly real. Within hours, the rumor mill at Vance & Cohen's was churning. Lauren Cooper was outfired for gross financial mismanagement. The news traveled back to the Cooper residence with lightning speed, exactly as Vivian intended, setting the stage for my public execution at the upcoming party. However, the professional attack was immediately followed by a devastating personal one. My grandmother, before she passed, had set aside a special trust, not large by Cooper standards, but meaningful, intended specifically for my future education or a startup venture. It was an amount close to $100,000 held in a segregated account managed by Father Howard and Mother Martha. That same week the termination rumor spread. I checked the account, a habit I had maintained since I was 18. The balance was zero. A quick search of the transaction history revealed the full scale of the betrayal. Mother Martha, in a panic, had signed off on transferring the entire sum to cover a desperate failing investment that Darren and Vivian had recklessly entered into. Martha's reasoning, coldly explained in a brief dismissive email, was that the family must present a united front, and since you're no longer employed, you clearly don't need the capital right now. Father Howard predictably feigned ignorance and refused to discuss the matter, citing his busy surgery schedule. Their actions weren't just theft. It was a final, brutal affirmation that my financial future, my dreams, and my well-being were utterly expendable collateral damage in their attempts to shield their favored children. I felt a deeper, colder rage than I had ever known. It was one thing to steal my work, but stealing the one buffer I had against their control was unforgivable. I immediately called Elias, and his reaction was a perfect storm of anger and resolve. "Lauren, this is past saving face. This is criminal." Elias immediately saw the legal ramifications of draining a protected trust fund without my consent, confirming my own assessment. He was my rock, keeping me tethered to reality when I wanted to scream. "We stop playing defense," he stated, his voice steel. "From now on, we gather the facts and plan the counterattack." I agreed, the decision made easy by their cruelty. I spent the next few days in a quiet fury, working methodically. I started by backing up every single email, communication log, and project file related to the Ascension Fund, the termination report, and my private trust fund account history. I knew I needed professional guidance for the legal theft, something far beyond my financial analysis skills, and that meant contacting the only person in the Cooper extended family I still trusted, my Aunt Beatrice. To dismantle a family built on a foundation of fake honor, I needed a weapon sharper than the numbers in a spreadsheet. I contacted Aunt Beatrice, my mother's sister, and a formidable corporate attorney in Philadelphia under the pretense of seeking advice on my layoff. Beatrice was one of the few people who saw through the Cooper facade, having been on the receiving end of Martha's controlling nature herself years ago. I flew down to meet her the following weekend, presenting her with the overwhelming evidence: the forged termination report, the transaction logs showing my funds drained to cover Vivian and Darren's blunder, and the underlying communications. Beatrice's expression hardened as she went through the digital files. "This termination report is a masterpiece of malice, Lauren," Beatrice stated, tapping the screen. "Vivian didn't just steal your presentation. She created a digital paper trail designed to ruin your reputation in this highly sensitive market. The timestamps and access logs confirm that she was logged in with your credentials outside of normal business hours, which is a major corporate crime." This was the smoking gun for Vance and Cohen's and Julian. But the deeper, more shocking truth was yet to come. Beatrice then shifted her focus to the trust fund theft. "This is bad, but look at this." She pulled out a brittle yellowed copy of my grandmother's will, which she had insisted I read years ago. "Your grandmother left you a substantial block of Cooper family stock, a 5% share of Father Howard's practice. It's restricted but legally yours since you turned 21. My parents had never once mentioned this stock. A few months ago, Howard and Martha, along with Vivian and Darren, executed a private sale agreement using your forged signature, claiming to liquidate your shares to stabilize the family's assets after another one of Vivian's ventures failed. The amount was astronomical, $600,000. The theft of the $100,000 from the trust fund was simply a distraction. The family had liquidated my inheritance, my birthright, and used the funds to prevent their own humiliation. This wasn't just unethical. This was criminal fraud, an absolute violation of trust and law, a consequence that could lead to disbarment for Father Howard and serious legal repercussions for Mother Martha. The rage felt cold and clear. They didn't just want me out of the company. I told Beatrice, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They needed me financially paralyzed so I couldn't fight them on the stolen shares. Beatrice nodded, her lawyer face grim. "Exactly. We now have two separate cases: corporate fraud and grand larceny. We will use the family fraud to neutralize their emotional authority and the corporate fraud to neutralize Vivian professionally. We must ensure your parents and siblings face tangible, real-world consequences here in the U.S. We will package this as a full litigation file." Leaving Beatrice's office, I no longer felt like a victim. I was a prosecutor armed with documented, undeniable truth, ready to wage war on the family name they held so sacred. The truth sometimes needs to be handed to the person powerful enough to change it. I returned to New York, the full litigation file secured in an encrypted drive. My next step was the most delicate, bringing Julian Vance into the fold. This was Elias's territory. Elias met me in our secluded park spot, his face etched with worry, having been monitoring Julian's moods and movements. "I told him," Elias said without preamble. "I told Julian everything." Elias, driven by the protective instinct of an older brother and my boyfriend, laid out the facts to Julian. Not about my family's betrayal, but about the corporate logs, and Vivian's clear pattern of professional misconduct, emphasizing the risk she posed to Vance & Coates' reputation and legal standing. Julian, notoriously meticulous, didn't react immediately. There was a subtle tension between the Vance brothers, a complex dynamic of rivalry and grudging respect. Julian was inherently suspicious of anyone close to him, and he needed reassurance that I was not merely trying to settle a personal score using corporate secrets. Elias, however, had the key. He presented Julian with the cross-referenced financial logs that showed Vivian was routing payments to a third-party consultant for the Ascension Fund, a consultant that Julian already suspected was a shell company used for kickbacks. Elias didn't need to mention the family drama. He focused on the bottom line. Julian finally agreed to a discreet meeting. He listened to me detail the corporate fraud, comparing my timeline with his own internal investigations. "Your sister is reckless," he concluded flatly. "She uses personal connections to mask financial incompetence. I've been monitoring her transactions for weeks, waiting for definitive proof that wasn't hearsay." He admitted he was already on the verge of firing Vivian, but was concerned about a lawsuit due to their personal relationship. My evidence, especially the access logs proving she logged in as me, to fabricate the termination report provided the necessary corporate separation. I can terminate her immediately for gross professional misconduct, Julian stated. Then came the deal. I provided Julian with the full legally compiled file from Aunt Beatrice, which documented the Cooper family's theft of my inheritance. Julian didn't flinch. I'll need to use this information to ensure that when I cut ties with Vivian, she and her family cannot touch the firm's reputation or mine. When I terminate her, the narrative must be that she brought her family's ethical rot into my company. Our alliance was forged not on emotion, but on mutual tactical advantage. Julian needed a clean exit. I needed complete irreconcilable severance from my family. Julian and I, along with Elias, planned the execution the annual Christmas party, the stage where Vivian had planned to deliver my public humiliation. This would ensure maximum exposure, maximizing the consequence. I also uncovered Vivian's ultimate motive. She had secured a back-channel deal to sell her own Vance & Cobra's shares to a rival firm, hoping to leverage her relationship with Julian for a final massive payoff before leaving him. Julian's firing would not only stop the sale, but would destroy her professional credibility in the market permanently. I knew there was no room left for weakness. It was time to put a definitive end to this story. We rejoin the scene at the Vance & Cobra Christmas party moments after Julian's initial shocking statement. Vivian, her panic giving way to venom, hissed, "You can't fire me, Julian. I'm your girlfriend. This is illegal petty revenge because of her." She gestured wildly at me, but Julian remained utterly unmoved, his composure a perfect shield. "It's not illegal, Vivian. It's necessary. You are terminated for falsifying financial reports and engaging in unauthorized access to sensitive company data under Lauren Cooper's credentials, creating a fabricated termination report to damage her reputation." Julian didn't raise his voice, but the mic in his hand ensured every guest heard the crisp, damning words. "This is not personal. This is business." Before Vivian could scream another denial, Julian addressed the entire room, his voice shifting to the formal tone of a CEO delivering a major corporate announcement. "Furthermore, my firm has uncovered evidence of significant personal financial fraud impacting a trusted employee. We believe transparency is critical." A large screen descended behind the stage. On it, the assembled guests saw the legal documents prepared by Aunt Beatrice detailing the illegal sale of Lauren's inherited shares. "Dr. Howard Cooper and Mrs. Martha Cooper, your actions constitute grand larceny and fraud against your own daughter Lauren Cooper in collaboration with Vivian and Darren Cooper. This is now a matter for the SEC and civil litigation." Father Howard, the renowned surgeon, staggered back, his face a grotesque mask of shame and fury. Martha began sobbing theatrically, while Darren, pale and sweating, muttered a denial that no one heard. The crowd, comprising clients and investors who valued integrity above all else, stared in stunned silence. Vivian shrieked, "Julian, you bastard! How could you know?" "I know because Lauren is my sister-in-law, Vivian." Julian cut her off, delivering the final emotional blow. "Elias Vance." My Elias stepped forward, placing a steady hand on my back. "I am Elias Vance, Julian's older brother, and Lauren is my fiancé." Elias's public declaration silenced the last whispers, completing the humiliation of the Cooper family. They had spent decades ridiculing my lack of status, only to find I was the one connected to the true power, the one protected by the Vance name. The legal and financial consequences were immediate and absolute. Howard Cooper faced civil suits and a review of his professional license. Martha Cooper and Vivian faced prosecution for fraud and theft, compelled to pay restitution for the stolen $600,000 and the smaller trust fund. Darren was swiftly terminated from his corporate relations job, his reputation irreparably tainted by the legal scandal. There was no reconciliation, no tearful apology, only the cold finality of the law. I walked out of that party with Elias, the full litigation file now sealed, and the burden of 25 years of abuse lifted. We moved to Zurich soon after, where Elias designed sustainable architecture projects, and I co-founded a boutique investment firm with Julian. I no longer answer to the Cooper name. I once believed survival meant staying and forcing them to finally see my worth. Now I understand that true liberation comes when you seize your own power and permanently close the door on the people who never deserve to walk through it. Never let a title or a blood tie define your boundaries. Sometimes the only way to win is to walk away fully armed and burn the bridge behind you.